Okay, hi, how are you today? Good. I will just go ahead and start 1 minute earlier because I have lots of, relatively speaking, announcement. But first of all, this is really totally ridiculous September weather. I really hate it. Hot and humid. I cannot really stand it. So I really, really appreciate your perseverance and the patience and then being here still under this kind of shitty weather. Okay. And another thing is a lot of students have problems with this downloading, even though the download link worked, but when they were trying to open it, your program didn't really respond to this. So I don't know what is the reason for this problem, but anyway, so I changed it. I put the new version of the file after freshly downloading this. So you try this reference book on download link again, and if that problem still persists, then there is another option here, alternative download link. That is actually original, that piracy site. Actually, I provided that link. So if you click on, hey, come on, yes. So it directly, but the problem is, it will, so you have to click this get button, okay? Try, don't ignore this download from the Tor mirror. Directly, you just press this button get. Then you will be able to start the downloading. But the problem is, it's very, 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 very slow. Okay? So over the weekend or in your leisure time in the evening at home, you just keep trying on until you finish downloading and then try, because that's the original. That's the original file. So if that doesn't work either, I don't know what else I can do. So these two different options I try. And if neither of the option still that doesn't really solve this your problem, then we just what the conclusion is, well, after all, we are not going to use this as a textbook, so what the heck is my final verdict. Okay. And another thing is, okay, some uh, some student had a question about, okay, last lecture, we didn't have the previous lecture or anything like we totally missed from the lecture head of page number 1 to 88 something, because we went over that in the last week. So during the last week, we actually had a class. So those who joined late, yeah, missed the first part of the lecture. So then what are you going to do if you were the one who is late participant? Then here, this is lecture recordings. Yeah, if you just click this lecture recording, then why is it so slow? Come on, internet. Oh, that's the standard quality of Sookmyung University's internet speed. Great. Am I getting the right internet? Yes, looks like so. Still tangle. But you get the idea. Yeah, this is a movie. And so this is my basic information. And probably, yeah. So you can catch up by reviewing the previous lecture recordings. And, thus. And one last thing is about the, now I'm going to log out. Let's go, log out. And another thing is, oops. Okay. Yeah, attendance. Yeah, attendance. I don't really have to Uh, thank you. Through what? Hey Young, that's standard our attendance record book. Forget about this. Okay. So yeah, some of the students from this last week actually had a question inquiry that, hey, I was here and this Hey Young attendance record, I was absent for the record because I didn't update at the time. Yeah. If I stick with, after collecting your record of this attendance record, which is actually the more important usage for this scrap paper is to have your idea, your feedback about your question or anything. But anyway, at the same time, I can use this as an attendance recordings. But if I strictly reflect your record to this Young official attendance record, then what's going to happen is what? If you skip, like if you are absent for like 1/4 of the entire class, then you will be automatically flunked out of the class F. But my policy, personal policy is you're okay, even if you are absent 1/4, even more than 1/4 of the entire class. The only your disadvantage potential you will get is point deduction at each time. After all, your maximum attendance point will not exceed 10 points. In other words, there are only very few number of actual classrooms that you need to be present physically to fulfill your maximum attendance record. Everything else will be the extra, so to speak, extra gravy. Yeah. If you are still want to be here, you're welcome, of course. And if you don't want to, for various reasons, that's okay. That's my personal attendance policy. So that's why I don't. So you can totally ignore what's on this Young because occasionally I'm going to update. But this update will be between ourselves. This update will be simply fake update. Doesn't reflect your actual school record. So do you understand? So from now on, I hope none of you had any worries about your actual attendance record is not over here. I was here, kind of thing. Don't you worry. You will be all safe. Okay? Yeah, that's another thing I'd like to bring. Okay, any other questions regarding any administrative things before we begin today's lecture? If not, okay. So, last lecture on Monday, we barely finished the concept of energy and ATP, and in particular, the metabolism is not the only way of carrying out the metabolism, but one of the major way of carrying out the metabolism is through hydrolysis and condensation. So hydrolysis is breaking chemical bond. On the other hand, the condensation is another way of combining chemical bond. But one thing that I want to emphasize is that neither hydrolysis nor condensation is the only way of chemical reaction or bond formation. There are so many different ways of putting bonds together or breaking bonds away. But hydrolysis and condensation, for some reason, appears so often, in particular, this type of introductory biology classroom. That's why I am particularly introducing that concept. Now, Responding to external stimuli, I have already briefly explained this. But one thing that I would like to emphasize over here is, okay, I keep forgetting always. I could use this, right? Good. This. Yeah, if anything works, one snap, one attempt, that wouldn't be me. Always fine. Okay. So this receptor. So this responding to. So you have to be able to sense what's going on outside. Like whether you are a single-celled organism or you are multicellular organism still. The same principle applies to outside of your entity, like outside of the cell, you should be able to, detect what's going on outside. How? If that was in a house, probably you would put so many different types of antenna. But cell doesn't have any such antenna. So what are you going to have? Like alternative to antenna. So this kind of a protein functioning as a sensing. And how are we going to name them? Receptors. That's called receptors. They are proteins. Right? So like this. If you were asked to draw any concept of receptor, probably you would here, these two lines would represent what? Cell membrane. Okay? So some of the bar anchoring this protein through this cell membrane, and also so this will be outside, right? And this will be inside of the cell. So all these different types of receptor proteins are facing outside. What's going on? What's going on? And what do you think? Why can't this apple has this eraser function? Damn it. Steve, are you listening? He's gone now. I know he's gone, but still I love him. So, what do you think? This and this, all this red thing. What are these? Any idea? We are trying to figure out what receptors are. At least one thing that I said, receptors are proteins, right? So all these are different proteins, but what do you think those little red things of different shapes? And what's the rest of them? If you understand that, then you can understand the concept of receptors. Anybody? I noticed that some of you are actually majors, biology majors, sitting over here. So I really ask you to stand up and lead us. You're not here today? So what are we sensing as a receptors? So these are receptor A, receptor B, C, D, different types of receptors. There are so many different types of receptors. Why? Because one single receptor can only recognize very specific thing, signal. So signal, what's the signal here? How do we recognize any different types of status or signal of outside in the form of what? Hey, what are you doing? You're supposed to follow me. It's looking this side. Stupid camera, just like me. And so the signal, still, all these things are happening in the world of materials. No matter how we have, what did you say? Okay, anyway. So all these, the red things represent different types of molecules, actually. So in other words, different type of receptor proteins can only recognize and specifically bind, interact, grab only very specific kind of molecule. So let's say this would be, for example, glucose molecule. Then this whole part, this protein part would be glucose receptor protein. And what's the purpose of putting the glucose receptor on the surface of a cell? To determine how much glucose are available outside. Why? Why is that so important? Glucose is a very important molecule for us to provide us with energy and so many different things. So if this receptor detect many abundant glucose, then it will transmit the signal. Okay, we are good. There are plenty of glucose molecules out there. So we can relax, okay? Because there are ton of food molecule potentially. Anytime we want, we can import like that. Or on the other hand, this molecule could be something like a toxin, dangerous things. Then this particular receptor recognizing and grabbing, in other words, binding this toxin molecule will signal a warning signal. Oh, we have some kind of dangerous molecule I have detected, so we better prepare. So these are all kind of this signal, these whole different molecules will serve as signal. That's what I mean. Different environmental signal, which will be delivered to where? At the center, control center in the cell. Usually that such a control center would be inside of our nucleus where the genetic materials are located. Yeah, somehow all those signals are being transmitted onto. That is this figure illustrates such concept of signal, so to speak, signal, what is here? The signal transduction. Yeah. In other words, there are many, the reason why there are so many numbers of arrows are there means one signal usually does not travel directly from one place to the actual, the destination. Destination, damn it. Destination, okay? But usually they are relayed. They are being relayed through some intermediary, the carriers. So many different intermediate carriers are also involved to indirectly transmit the signal to eventually to the actual location where it is being processed, and the response is determined there. That's why usually that is the location of such thing would be usually, not always, but usually in the nucleus, because that's where your genetic material is. They would respond in terms of changing gene, so to speak, expression. So for now, a lot of you, if you are not actually science or biology major, this concept, this vocabulary of gene expression will be very vague. Okay, what's that? What's gene expression? But you really have to get used to this. You cannot really, by one click, understand, oh, I understand now what gene expression is. But that's almost everything. That's almost everything gene expression is, through which all these different responses, including determining some of the specific traits. Because as an individual, you can only show your different characters or different behavior or different characteristics through exhibiting, displaying different traits. That's, I hope that you can understand that concept, trait, the relationship between trait and your gene. And if you have a particular unique trait, and how is it going to be able to affect your whole thing, entire thing? You are nothing but whole combination, collection and combination of different traits. And it will all dictate your behavior, the way you think, the way you like prefer, anything. That's what. At least within this classroom. Yeah, within this classroom of biology, that's what these people involved in this field believe. I'm not like necessarily, I'm not saying that's 100% true. It could be wrong. We don't know. But at least, so far as we have researched and then we have come to a conclusion, that's what we think, we believe that's true. Okay. So this homeostasis, I have already briefly went over the concept of this homeostasis last lecture. Some examples of, very silly examples, very simple examples of such homeostasis would be something like this. But this type of example of homeostasis will never, ever appear on your exam because it's too silly. Which one of the following would not be an example of homeostasis? Oh, that's very stupid kind of question. So, yeah, these are some very easily you can actually bring up examples of homeostasis because each of these represent some kind of conditions that you always keep constant, no matter what happens outside. Yeah, that's it. But actually, this is one example of how. This is an example of how question, how thing. What are the homeostasis? I already labeled them as a very silly examples, but how is a different story? How? So, for example, if you want to maintain a kind of relatively kind of constant blood sugar level, the way you can maintain is usually kind of thermostat. If you go up too high, then you try to suppress. If you go down too low, then you try to go up. Like seesaw-like thermostat-like mechanisms always usually exist inside of your body, and that's how. But actually, that doesn't really answer how. That's kind of superficial surface answer. But really, if you really like get serious and then ask, really, I'm serious, how? Then now you bring up these two things. What are they? Glucagon and insulin, what are they? Anybody heard of these two names? They are very famous names. Anyone knows what they are? Hormone, yes, hormone. Thank you. They are hormones. So hormones, what's hormones? Hormones are actually very closely related with those receptor function that I just showed. Hormones travels. Hormones are very small molecules. So in other words, very small molecule and travels inside of your body from one place to a relatively distant other destination and arrives at that particular destination, and those neighboring cells at the destination, some of the cells are able to recognize particular hormone. How? How some other cells, what are they? I don't understand. But some very specific cells can recognize very specific hormone. What's the difference? On what mechanism some particular cells can recognize some specific hormone like insulin, but others cannot. What's the difference? Huh? What? Yeah, existence, like presence or absence of receptors. If you are lucky enough to have this particular receptor on your cell surface, then you can. Oh, this is my hormone. Grab it, and then once you grab this hormone, what's next? Because of this interaction, binding, now signal will be transmitted to the cell and do something about it. So hormones, the function of hormones are just such that they are messengers. Hey, somebody says you need to do something. So because of the reason, hormones can only be recognized specifically. Specificity is the actual secret. Yeah. The interaction, particular unique interaction between one particular hormone and the respective cell. We call that the target, hormone target. In other words, why can only some cells be a target of a particular hormone? It's because they only have the particular receptors. Okay? So these two different hormones act differently. And some more specific detail we don't have to worry about. Here, the purpose of showing this diagram is to show you how they work, usually the so-called homeostasis, the way homeostasis is being maintained. Like for example, if we take a blood sugar level maintenance as an example, then one particular hormone will try to increase the blood sugar level by stimulating some specific target. On the other hand, this particular hormone, insulin, is trying to do what? Go down the level of blood sugar by stimulating some other type of receptors. Okay? So it always like between these two hormones battle. The battle is going on, so then the balance is always like maintained. But when some of this thing is not functioning properly, for example, these days, a lot of adults are having problems of a proper function of this particular hormone, insulin. Because of that, we have diabetes and type of such headache. Same thing. In the case of a blood calcium level, same thing will be happening. So here, even we don't really have to try to memorize the name of the hormone at this point. Calcitonin and PTH, who are they? Who cares? But they are two different types of hormones acting opposite to do the same, like similar thing to the case of blood sugar level maintenance. So similarly, blood calcium level will also be maintained at the constant, relatively speaking, constant level like this. Okay. Another very important thing, distinction between homeostasis and other would be this. Homeostasis, trying to achieve some equilibrium. If you understand what this equilibrium means, like kind of a status quo, same thing, sameness. But this sameness, equilibrium, under homeostasis is something different from the normal, usual, chemically, we imagine the equilibrium like. In that, it is something called dynamic and active equilibrium. What does that mean? Even equilibrium, trying to understand equilibrium concept is even difficult enough for me. And then you are asking me to be able to distinguish the difference between the normal equilibrium and this homeostatic equilibrium, that's too much, maybe. Yeah, I agree. But let's give it a try. Give it a try. And if you can take it, fine. If it's not, then don't worry about it. So chemical equilibrium. This is something that the reason why chemical reaction occurs. Life, universe, all those matters, including life, they want like always equal thing. Their purpose is trying to reach the equilibrium. That is the reason why certain chemical reaction will occur spontaneously. If that chemical reaction occurs, then they will go towards the equilibrium. That's why that is a spontaneous reaction. It will happen naturally. So chemical equilibrium is something that is the result, as a result of this spontaneous chemical reaction. On the other hand, dynamic equilibrium is, although on the surface you may think that it's not moving at all, so staying the same. So you may consider it as another sameness, but in reality, actually, in order to maintain that kind of particular same thing look-alike status, underneath a lot of effort is being provided, like in the form of energy. In order to maintain, you provide energy. What does it sound like? In the last lecture's example, on what kind of occasions did we have to open your wallet? And what type of circumstances? You forgot about that? One is a spontaneous reaction. Metabolism, you don't have to do anything because it's a spontaneous reaction. But the other way of reaction, which is anabolism, what did I say about the anabolic reaction? That is a non-spontaneous. Right? It's not supposed to happen. But does that mean that it's not going to happen at all, ever? No, it will happen if you do what? Provide energy. So this kind of energy, whenever you need energy, that means that's something like unnatural. Okay? It's not supposed to stay the same. But in order to stay that particular condition same, then you have to put your effort in the form of what? Provide energy. That's the difference between dynamic equilibrium and chemical equilibrium. And what did I say? The homeostasis is maintained by this dynamic equilibrium mechanism. In other words, homeostasis. Every homeostatic characteristic, that means you require what? If you want to maintain any particular kind of homeostasis in your body, you have to do what? Energy, yes. Yeah, don't be afraid of something like being incorrect. Here, we are here to have a freedom of being incorrect. Please. So open your mouth, open your mind, and then say it loud, hold all kinds of crazy, incorrect things. That's the way. That's how this classroom is being fed and maintained, please. Okay. So, to give you a kind of real-life example of what's the difference between homeostasis and the chemical equilibrium is because if I said that homeostasis requires always the energy input, that means automatically you are not able to observe this homeostasis in any what? Non-living object. Because why? Non-living object cannot have what? Energy, yeah, but like an elaborate non-living object or those who once lived but no longer living anything cannot have metabolism. Without metabolism, there is no way you can provide, you can supply energy. In other words, you are not able to observe any homeostasis in dead organism or non-living object. Only in the live, living organism can you detect the trace of homeostasis. Okay? So this is an example of, however, chemical equilibrium. What do I say about the chemical equilibrium? It is a spontaneous reaction. It is something that is being achieved through spontaneous chemical reaction. At the end of the spontaneous chemical reaction is equilibrium, chemical equilibrium. So in other words, outside of non-living, anywhere, everywhere, this chemical equilibrium is happening. Okay. So in other words, here, amoeba, when also alive, was actively involved in this type of metabolism, right? So one such example of metabolism is if one try to compare the level of ATP and ADP. Hopefully you understand the difference between ATP and ADP from last lecture. Okay? When ATP was used up, then it become ADP, and then ADP will be recharged into ATP, right? It's being cycled. So, but this is a characteristic. Characteristically, whenever you look at different individual amoeba, always it was like the level of amount of ATP inside of this amoeba was much higher, like something like at least 3 times as much as those of ATP. That was something that you always observed. Then you just take it for granted. Oh, that's the kind of status quo. No matter what, whenever you look at, and it doesn't only apply to the amoeba, but also applies to other all living organisms like that. So this level of ATP versus ATP will be always like something like 3-to-1 ratio of always ATP is higher than ATP. That's kind of a common like observation. Is it? So then you wonder whether it is because as a result of a chemical equilibrium or some kind of effort, like we can label as homeostasis. You don't know, what? But you immediately realize that was the result of homeostasis. Once you compare this thing with the dead amoeba, it become like this. Wow. Why? Why as soon as this poor amoeba deceased, then it was like a totally overturned this ratio. Now always like ADP is so high and ATP is so low. Can anyone provide a decent explanation, decent account for this? So this now we call as a chemical equilibrium. That's kind of a clue, okay, for the explanation. So now, oh, this is actual chemical equilibrium. You understand why? Because it's something that you can observe in any dead organism like a dead amoeba. Then now you go back to your previous observation made in the living live amoeba, then you realize how stupid you were. Oh, that was a result of homeostasis, not the chemical equilibrium. Now, you just give me an example, explanation of why. Why in the chemical equilibrium status, this whole ADP versus ATP ratio would be just like different. On the other hand, in other words, if you just For example, 1 second ago it was like this, and then amoeba was dead. Now this ATP will be spontaneously, yeah, ADP, and there is no backward, right? Yeah. What is your name? Olga. Where are you from? Poland. Okay. You will be given +1 towards the midterm exam. Congratulations. Okay. And everyone else will have an equal opportunities like this. So please, please, please. Yeah, that was exactly. That was not easy to. Yeah, that was kind of difficult to answer. And I really appreciate your. So exactly. So this from ATP to ADP is a spontaneous reaction. It will happen anywhere, everywhere, as a spontaneous. And that means it is going toward the reaction, direction of the reaction from ATP to ADP is going toward the chemical equilibrium. And that's why it is a spontaneous reaction. When you are alive, then you can, putting your effort, you can try to go backward, like try to reverse this thing by putting the energy. And you just falsely, mistakenly observe that status as a kind of a common norm whenever you try to observe the live living amoeba or any other cells. And then you just by mistake, oh, that is something kind of norm. But you realize, oh no, because that doesn't exist. That type of particular condition does not exist whenever those cells are dead. So that's the differences. The bottom line is, you don't really have to understand riddle. You don't really have to remember details of this thing. But one important thing to carry as a take-home message about this is homeostasis can only occur in the living organism. And the more importantly, the reason being is why? Because dead organism cannot have any metabolism, so cannot provide any energy, because homeostasis requires energy input. Is the kind of a summary of this. Okay, growth and development. The cell division, as I mentioned last time, cell division is the way through which we try to achieve the immortality, which is like an unachievable dream. In the end, it may turn out, but anyway, we are trying, keep trying. So this cell division. So through cell division, actually, we can achieve two different things. One is growth, the other one is a development. Sometimes you observe cell division, and end result of the cell division, you designate that as that's a growth. So many times they use just to describe that same cell division procedure, but you call it different as a development. Question is, what's the difference between growth and development? Although both in growth and development, the cell divisions serve as common denominator, same thing. So why? Growth is increasing by simply number. So you can always achieve this growth by simply repeating the cell division, then you can always achieve growth. If you happen to be a multicellular organism, yes, your body mass will grow. Okay. If you are unfortunately, why? What's wrong with your single-celled organism? So I shouldn't say unfortunately, but if you happen to be a single-celled organism like bacteria, then your growth means simply increasing your numbers by multiples of cell division. Same thing. However, this development, this is only can be observed in where? You cannot observe that this particular phenomenon in any type of a single-celled organism. So I noticed I noticed it only very recently in some of the high school biology textbook, this growth and development as one common characteristics of life. That is wrong, because this development you cannot see in all of the not all organisms can display this development. Only multicellular organism can display the development. Single-celled organism, there's no way they can show this development. Understand why? Development means differentiation. Cell division, yeah, cell division is one thing. But at the same time, you are not only doing this cell division, but also some different part of the cells should change into differently, like different shape and different function. That's what we call development. So in other words, development is achieved through the process of differentiation. So, conclusion. Unicellular, single-cellular organism can only have this growth, cannot have any development. Multicellular organism, on the other hand, it is not some kind of option, but is a must. If you neglect this development as a multicellular organism, you are not qualified for being any legitimate multicellular organism. Or look around everywhere. All those multicellular organisms, were you able to find any single example that as a multicellular organism, but not having any this differentiation or development? No, they have to. It's a must. I already once said that as a multicellular organism, if you don't have any this differentiation, then those area is called differently. What? As what? Cancer. Cancer is not part of your body, but something that you, the subject of removal. You have to get rid of them because that's not proper part of your body as a multicellular organism. What?
Professor,
Yeah.
cancer is part of body.
Hmm.
Cancer cells have grown.
Yeah, cancer by definition is undifferentiated whole cell mass. So cancer cells, one such characteristic is they don't follow the rule of differentiation. They're totally undifferentiated. They only care for the only interest of cancer cells is simply keep dividing, and that is a big hazard for the other neighbor, the normal so-called regular cells. That's why we need to get rid of the cancer. So this is such an example of already even inside of your mother when you are born, this whole differentiation, development through differentiation has already occurred, and then ongoing thing until you reach your adultery. Adultery is not about adulthood. Shoot. So
Professor, can cancer cells grow embryo and fetus?
cancer grow in fetus?
Fetus and embryo.
In embryo? Usually no. Usually no, right? Cancer usually develop after those stages. I know, but that's the actual problem. When you were in fetus or in embryonic stage, right? If you are kind of still not achieved the full differentiation, still you are okay because that's what you are expected to. But once you reach to your adulthood, then you have to be able to show full status of this differentiation. And then you show some of your body part shows this undifferentiated status and cell division only things. Then that is absolutely those are the definition of the cancer. Now, let's go into the other characteristic, which is reproduction and heredity. And as you can read, through reproduction, you know what you can achieve. Okay. So through reproduction, you can live forever. Okay. And in the meantime, you are achieving also this type of activity we call heredity, like transmitting your whole genome. What is a genome? Okay. What is a genome by definition? How is it different from gene? Yes. I'm not going to give you another extra 1 point. Okay. Whole thing is om. Yeah. Whenever we refer to whole thing, we just simply conveniently put the OME at the end. Then that means, okay, everything, whole thing. So for example, gene is an individual thing. Gene is a single individual thing. But then we just, instead of calling gene, we call it genome, OME. Then all of a sudden it means everything, entire thing, entire whole collection of your gene in your cell, in a single cell or in an organism, representative organism, that's genome. Then same thing. So for example, proteome. It's a new word actually. Only recently, like 20 years ago, it started use this proteome. OEME. So protein is a single thing. Then proteome means whole entire collection of every proteins present in your cell. It's proteome. So you keep going on and on, and like even metabolite. Metabolites is small chemicals. Okay? But metabolome means entire metabolic metabolite chemicals in your single cell or anything. So this is a newly coined word in the era of omics, like system biology. In the era of system biology, we just tend to look at everything at the same time instead of focusing one thing at a time in the past. But then we need to coin another vocabulary for that. So anyway, so this entire genome will be transferred or transmitted onto the next generation is what. But there are two different types of such activity. Like one is called without sex. Reproducing without sex means asexual reproduction. Simply you are dividing. One cell divided into two, and two divided into four. I keep doing it, and you are simply increasing the number as asexual reproduction. Or, so as a consequence of asexual reproduction, you create clone, genetically identical your copies. That means, in other words, the other way of reproduction, through sexual reproduction, you are creating some genetically different your offspring. Is the big difference. So here, asexual reproduction would be much cheaper, extremely economical, fast, efficient. But still, we are stupid enough ignoring such an economic way of reproducing, and then we are trying to get involved in this really inconvenient way of reproduction. Why? Because there is a reward. Generating genetically different recombined offspring. So that thanks to that, partly, not all, but partly thanks to that activity, exhibit all this unique variety of different things. So, yeah, one thing that I'd like to, because this is not a place that we are looking at and considering discussing some more detail in depth in the form of in the course of introducing some of the life common characteristics, each category what they are briefly to provide a brief summary of a characterization. That's why. So in the case of sexual reproduction, what's important about this sexual reproduction characteristic is this: the concept of a gamete. Because through sexual reproduction, you inevitably get to produce this intermediate form of the so-called gamete. So if you consider your body cell as a kind of normal body, I hate that vocabulary, normal. Really, 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 because there is no such thing like a normal. What's the normal? What's the standard? So I try to avoid as much as possible using the normal word, normal. But anyway, sometimes I cannot avoid. There is no proper, suitable alternative of saying normal. So maybe slip out of my mouth. But anyway, so let's say if your body cells as a kind of a regular standard cell, then what would be the example of this gamete? This is a different type of a cell, and how they are different from so-called this regular body cell. That's another concept definition that I would like you to understand during today's lecture. Gamete versus this so-called body cell. This body cell, common word is body cell, you can find in every part of your body. More professional word for this body cell is called somatic cell, or in Korean is called what? Okay, and the gamete then would be in Korean, that would be what? Right. So you can give actually, you can easily think of an example of such gamete. What are they? There are two different kinds of gamete. You know, right? Sperm and eggs. Sperm and eggs are an example of two examples of gamete. Yeah. Sperm exists in one part of the one type of human, and egg exists on the other type of human. There are two different kinds of. I shouldn't say there are only two different kinds of. That's also wrong. But anyway, so sperm and gamete is an example of a gamete. Sperm and eggs is a gamete. But then, what's the difference between this normal, the somatic cell, and the gamete? The big difference. Yeah. I cannot stand anymore. Or why don't you pack and leave immediately from the classroom? Yeah, exactly. Thank you. So we call this as for example, diploid versus haploid. Diploid means having two sets of chromosomes. How many chromosomes in your single body cell has that? How many? Counting numbers. 46. Yeah, you have a 46 chromosome as a human cell. Haploid means you have only 23 chromosome. How come? Actually, the better way of asking is how come you have a 46 chromosome? How did you end up at 46 chromosome? You got 23 from your father. You got from 23, another 23 from your mother. That's how you ended up in 46. That's why I call this diploid as having two sets of chromosomes. So if we number chromosome from starting from 1 to whatever, okay, then you would be something, the kind of chromosome you can number. Different kind of chromosome you can number would be only 23. Chromosome number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you go all the way up to something 22, and X chromosome and Y chromosomes are something kind of different, specially treated, but at least. So in other words, you have two chromosome number 1 in your cell as a body, as a somatic cell. Two chromosome number 1, two chromosome number 2, two threes. Why? Because you got one chromosome number 1 from your father and another chromosome number 1 from your mother. Those two chromosomes are actually like virtually equal chromosome, but not entirely exactly identical chromosome, but kind of same chromosome. How do we call such kind of same but not exactly identical chromosome? How do we call properly? Homologous chromosome. If you prefer Koreans, then probably Koreans for homologous would be what? So every body cell has a homologous chromosome. Number 1 has its own partner. Chromosome number 2 has its own partner. In case of referring to the chromosome X, you guys' cases, you have another chromosome number X partner. You have a 2X chromosome. In my case, I have one single chromosome X chromosome, and Y chromosome behave as if a partner of a chromosome X. They are totally two different chromosomes, but for some reason, chromosome Y pretend, hey, I'm a partner of chromosome X. No, you're not, because you are so much totally different from chromosome X. But anyway, so those are the definition of homologous chromosome. And the origin of a homologous chromosome is because you are the result of this sexual reproduction. So through this sexual reproduction, first you have to temporarily generate this gamete, which is haploid. So you, in order to produce gamete, like sperm or egg, okay, in order to produce them, you have to reduce the entire set of this chromosome set into single set of chromosome, having only one single unique set of 23. So whenever you see in the gamete, then you get to see only one chromosome number 1, only one chromosome number 1, and 2, 3, 4, 5. Every different chromosome, you have only single copy. You don't have any extra backup. That's the difference between diploid and haploid. So all these gametes are haploid. Then when are they going to be restored, the status of a diploid? For the sake of this gamete, they are now haploid. And the time they can be restored into diploid would be what? When they have this so-called successful fertilization to become zygote. Sperm and egg combine together through sexual reproduction and restore diploid cell status. And then you restart all over again the whole this cell business of cell division and development. And then at the proper time, you do this silly business again. You get to produce another gamete, and then try to do. That's how you continue on this. I thought I was able to finish at least chapter 1 today. When are you going to learn? So for the rest of about 10 more minutes or something, I'd like to go over, not all, but some of your last lecture's questions, and then finish today's lecture. So this lady's question was a really, really long question. So actually I had to split this question into two different, what is the other one? Oh, shoot. Sorry, my bad. Oh, there is. Yeah. So many, the point of this question, as my take is the species concept, and actually mystery and arbitrariness of the species concept, because when we define a species concept as a reproductive barrier, then how shaky it is actually. I simply define as this species concept as a reproductive barrier is something really solid, concrete, but it is not in effect. It can be somehow in many different ways can be broken. Then how are we, when that happens, how are we going to define those examples or broken example? So something that we actually remains to be answered. And another thing that I would like to point out here is this person is kind of has a little bit of the kind of the confusion between species and races. Different species is different species, and different races are totally different things. Races are within a single species, but only showing some, at least on the surface, different kind of a trait, characteristic trait due to their particular long-term environmental effect is the races. So, because obviously we can always have a free interracial marriage, and then we have no problem of producing offspring between two different individuals of different races. Although there are some little technical issues that I don't want to touch over here, but anyway, so that's it. And this, yeah, some scientists are actually, firmly believe it's been already undertaken as being going on, and some others like me, no, I don't think that's already began, but eventually it will occur. And actually, another student had a question, or similar question about what do you think about this mass extinction which humans are generating? Personally, yeah, we are really, really disrupting. We are making so much mess on this earth. But personally, I believe that actual, real, big strike, big, huge blow may come actually from other, some unexpected sources. So, but extinction will sooner or later will happen again. So our times on Earth is just numbered. We are not going to be able to continue on forever. Is something that for sure. This one, actually, I'm not going to answer this but I'm going to put this particular question on your exam. On upcoming midterm exam, I'm going to put this question. So what do you think? So your take. Think about it. Okay? Everyone get that? Because it's going to be an exam question. This one, this is totally two different things. Whether it's being able to try to respond to external stimuli and trying to maintain some internal conditions is totally two exclusive thing. So those who survived under such extinction is not something that we can say about they survived because of this. Their ability to respond to the external stimuli was much better or more stronger than, no, that is not something that we can, that's totally irrelevant to different issues. Same thing. Can I? Oh, shoot. Yeah, I just made a mistake. Those who cannot, can you understand this, some of the Koreans? No, okay, so that's not fair. So, oh, that's why, shoot. Oh, that one's okay. It was written in English. That was okay. This, the, those two are involved in the related with the metabolism, but uniquely this, the material metabolism sort of directly translated. And this one is actually more similar to the regeneration. But we literally, these two things are like identical, but for some reason, only in Korea, for some reason, we use these two different terminology. But outside of this territory, they don't use this thing at all, but simply use the metabolism as a body reaction caused by the virus that can outside of the body. It is a metabolism or a response to stimuli. What do you think? What do you think? You cannot. This response, there is no such thing like there's a like clear boundary between responsiveness to the external stimuli and like metabolism. In the way of responding to the external stimulus, you, if that's needed, you have to use some of the metabolic activity. So asking this whether it's a metabolism or response, it could be both, or it could be something like totally different, depending on different occasions. Okay. Like it depends on what kind of reaction what kind of response are we going to do against this viral infection. Sometimes we have to do this, generate some of the metabolic reactions, some other times some other mechanical, physical things. This. Yeah, this one. I cannot really understand this adding water, extracting water things. Yeah, okay. How about this? So, uh, hydrolysis. What do I mean hydrolysis? So this is polymer, big molecule. Through hydrolysis, you are breaking chemical bond present. This red line appeared on this cartoon. Are examples of such chemical bond. So through one hydrolysis reaction, we are trying to break this one particular chemical bond. How? Under this particular reaction, type of reaction called hydrolysis, we are adding water. Why? What's the role of this water added? This water molecule itself split. What happened? You look at it. What happened? This water split into OH plus H, right? And one part go with this right side, and one part go with this left side of this molecule to split this thing. That's the mechanism of hydrolysis. Now, because when we water, what is the water? Water is inserted after split into this OH and H. That's the basic general mechanism of hydrolysis. Then probably you can better understand more easily the backward reaction, which is condensation. You have to recover this water. These two are the molecules that you need to extract. As long as you extract these two, then there will be connection again, this chemical bond. That's what we call condensation. Totally opposite. Here, you take these two out. So as a water molecule escaping, water molecule being escaped, and then as a consequence, you now restore this chemical bond. It's totally opposite. Okay, does that answer your question, hopefully? Yeah. I don't think I can go further because you will kill me then if I do so. So I have to stop and simply hope that you have a wonderful Chuseok holidays, and Oh yeah, you don't have to see me next week, entire next week. Good, great. So yeah, see you the week after the Chuseok break. Okay.